Last Pint Productions presents the New Way podcast. The New Way contains adult content, and new episodes are released most Wednesdays. So back off, man. We're professionals. Listener discretion is advised.
So you were in Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah?
Were you in the shit?
Yeah, I was in shit.
Last night, Darth Vader came down from planet Vulcan and told me that if I didn't take Lorraine out, that he'd melt my brain.
Here's how you get him. He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me. I'm naked.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Hello, and welcome once again to the New Way podcast, where we break down pop culture so you don't have to. I'm your host, Matt Shank, joined by my co-host, Mr. Benjamin Wilson.
Hello.
And my other co-host, Mr. Nicholas Santa Croce.
Just co-host is fine. You don't have to.
You don't have to be the other co-host?
Qualifier.
You don't like
No,
other?
Look, I'm fine with going third in order. I'll go third in order, but I'm co-host simply.
Yeah, easy.
Which
Put some respect on my name.
Is there a difference between?
He doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to be
other
othered.
co-host.
He doesn't want to be othered.
Listen, I don't know if you know this, but I spent the last 2 hours watching Lost, and the others, it has a negative connotation.
First of all, that I understand, but I'm being genuinely honest. Is saying
Other
the other
co-host.
that makes you
Disrespectful.
diminutive?
No, it doesn't make it. It's just
This
it's
is my co-host and
disrespectful.
my other co-host. Like, I don't understand. Like, if this is my brother and this is my other brother, the other brother's the bad brother.
Well, it's just the other
Totally.
brother. Who gives a shit about the other brother?
The other brother is that brother.
Such
Like, clearly
bullshit. This is the
black
most
sheep.
Seinfeldian nonsense I have ever heard on this show in the
Nonsense.
entirety of the show.
How dare you disrespect
This
me?
is such
How dare
bullshit.
you?
Fine.
In front of Ken. In front, you got to do that right in front of Ken.
This is
Wait,
our
wait,
other
wait, wait.
guest
Wait,
host.
wait,
Oh wait. Oh, there's another person here.
There's somebody else here.
I'm
That's
so
what I'm
sorry.
saying.
Let's introduce the fourth that is
Please.
joining us tonight.
Move on.
We are joined. I'm just going to put it out there right now. We are raising the intelligence level of the show immensely tonight, and it's going to get really uncomfortable for the three of us as Ken just walks circles around us. But this is Ken Posner. I have known Ken since we were young men in high school. He's a couple years behind me, but ahead of me leaps and bounds mentally and intellectually.
What's your IQ, Ken? What's your IQ? Give it to us.
I was tested for it in fourth grade, but I don't want to say it here. I don't want to
How much-
poison the well away.
How much you bench?
Man, do you even lift, bro?
I don't. Not anymore. I have an infant, so all I do is lift a baby. Like now,
They're
that's
pretty
what
heavy, those
that's what
things.
He's gaining weight incredibly fast. It's kind of like ancient Greeks would like lift like young like calves like above their heads, and as they grew into like bulls, like these guys would just like kind of monster out, like kind of a thing. That's what they say. I don't believe it.
You're
Why don't
leaning
we- why
into
don't we
that
do that
intro right now.
anymore?
Yeah. When did we give that up?
I don't know.
There's so many great things from history in the Bible that we should still be doing right now, I think. I think we should get right on
if
that.
If the research for this show bears out at all, yeah, absolutely. There's tons of stuff.
What's funny, Ken actually, many years ago, was one of the first people to read Dream Writers. When Ben and I wrote it, the first person to give us notes and feedback, and then he was part of that read-through. He was one of 4 people that read really well at the read-through, and the rest of the read-through did not go so great. I mean, Paul was pretty amazing with his delivery of "You're killing me," but other than that, it was pretty rough. But yeah, Ken is so what's really fun. So Ken also has a brother, not another brother. He has a brother named Ben. There is a Ben and a Ken. And I used to go play the movie game with them at their house, and they would dominate because they grew up the same as me. That they were glued to like HBO and pay cable television. So they watched movies after movies, but they had watched a completely different pocket of films, including the one that at that point I had not seen, Tombstone, when we had started playing that game in like the early 2000s. And Tombstone with like JFK was always my like one to go to for the movie game to like match an actor or something, but Tombstone is just, it's packed. And you guys
The movie game is where you one person says the movie
You
title,
name an
and then you pick
actor.
an actor,
Yes.
then the movie that they were in that wasn't
Yes.
the last movie, and so on. Okay.
And
got it.
they would kill.
If you know Tombstone and Silverado well, you can pretty much just bounce back and forth between those two movies.
That's true. That's
You
true.
can't you can't repeat a movie though. That's part of the rules, man.
Well, yeah.
No, but they would save Tombstone till it was way down the line, and there'd be some, and like they'd have some random
You're like Billy Bob Thornton, and you're like, oh yeah, he's in that movie.
He's
for
in
like
the movie for 2
minutes.
days, and Thomas Hayden Church is in that movie for 5 seconds, and Michael Rooker. I'm like, God, this movie is too many people in it. It's ridiculous.
It's beautiful. It's actually referenced in that line, "You called down the thunder, now you got it," in Mallrats.
That's right.
That's
that is a Tombstone shout down to Michael Rooker as a crossover. So
It's
before we
crazy that was Yondu. I
It
forget
is so
every
crazy.
time. Every time I forget. I never make that connection in real time. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it is
May
insane.
we all be so lucky to one day be invited into the Marvel universe. It'd be a wonderful thing.
Oh my god.
Before we get,
I wish you all knew what it was like. I really do. It's
oh, this is
it
true.
is
As
amazing.
good as it seems.
Ken
Right.
Ken does not know about. So Nick is technically in the MCU. His character who plays is a She-Hulk date app that gets swiped right. She-Hulk swipes right on Nick.
Yep.
As a DJ.
That is canon. That is I'm a DJ in Los Angeles. Is my
and he had to sign away his life to Kevin Feige. Like, in fact, if he has a child, he has to name him Marvel, like legally now.
I would have done that for free.
Marvel.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah.
Shazam.
That's tremendous.
It's fantastic. I love that Nick each week was like, I had to sign waivers for multiple episodes. I think there's an arc, and it just was like previously on She-Hulk, and he's like, I made it again.
But like I would make that like wrap up every week because they just need 2 milliseconds that shows she was online dating.
Nick, don't sell yourself short. The audience was clamoring for more about the DJ. What information can we glean this time from that 1 second snippet? What do we learn about him? What is his life?
Previously on She-Hulk, when she was so desperate to find a date.
It is Earth 919's DJ Khaled. Basically, I just I take other people's work and I yell DJ New in the middle of it over and over again.
Was your character named Nick, or was it a different name?
No, it was Nick.
It was Nick. It was Nick the DJ.
Perfect.
Nick the DJ.
Perfect.
Was that tough for you to get into character for that?
DJ Slicky Nicky in the Marvel universe.
Don't
No, I
ever
mean
say
I
those words.
I just
I hate those
dug
words
deep
so
and-
bad. I don't enjoy that. Oh, we have Frozen. And
it was an extension
Wait,
of
was it a
myself.
shirtless
Photo.
pic? Was it
It's a shirtless pic.
Oh, yeah.
it is a shirtless pic. Sorry, we
Shirtless pic.
did lose a connection for just a second there, but I think everything
Speaking
got
of,
picked
do
up.
you even lift, bro? Actually,
do not.
this is
I do not.
that's correlated actually because we're recording on a Sunday, and the reason why we're recording on a Sunday is because I actually start chemotherapy tomorrow, which is going to be a lot of fun. Not sure how that's how I'm going to feel recording during the week. I should be okay by the following week, but when I was getting all my prep on Friday. The person who was doing my vitals was like, okay, 194 pounds. Your blood pressure is 109/68. Your resting heart rate's 51. Are you an athlete? I was just like, I'm just texting this to every. I immediately texted Paul, and I was just like, I'm winning. I'm winning right now.
You know, Paul is in a dark place right now after that text. Like he's gone into deep depression.
Yeah, he was just like, geez, I gotta start making better life decisions.
I gotta lift more, bro.
I gotta make some diet changes. Your resting heart rate's 51.
Yeah.
My God, that's cool. As the other side of the.
That's pretty close. I'm at like 58, 60 is my resting.
Do you know what white coat syndrome is? Which is basically where you get high blood pressure and a higher resting heart rate because you go into a medical facility. Well, I'm so used to medical facilities now, I have the opposite effect where it's like my anxiety is through the roof and I walk through the doors. And I'm just like, oh, I'm going to be taken care of here. I'm fine.
Yeah, I have to. I have that. What you were just talking about. I have that, and I have to tell them each time that like I get so panicked about it that like you have to measure my heart rate on a separate. Like I will go sometimes for just a separate visit where I know that's the only thing that's going to happen, so that I can be calm and not panicked about it.
In 2017, everyone they were like they thought I was going to have to go on like blood pressure medication, and I was like, no, I have white coat syndrome. It's like every time I walked in, I would have anxiety, and then they actually were like, buy a. One of those blood pressure machines and then take it first thing in the morning before anything's happened. And I was like, oh no, my blood pressure is completely normal. Like it was.
Well, now I watch now that I've got the watch, I use the Welltory app, so I'm watching my watch my blood pressure constantly, and
my resting heart rate right now is 85. I mean,
really?
my God.
That's because you're looking at me, Nick. You're looking at me.
Yeah, I'm at
listen,
70.
We just mentioned Michael Rooker, so don't take
Yeah,
all the credit.
And you were just
Mallrats.
watching. And you
So
were just
Mallrats
watching Lost.
reference. Yeah, and I was watching Lost not too long ago.
I went up one when you mentioned Kevin Smith
you
movie. I went up one.
Yeah, you did.
Now it's went faster. Now I'm getting excited. I do want to talk real quick before we get into topic. I know,
We know
Ben,
where the blood is going.
Ben, you were at the theater today. How was your time at the theater?
No, the theater.
Theater. That's it.
Oh, you're talking to me.
Yeah.
I was at I was at Wicked today.
Yes.
Yeah, with the kids. It was fun. It was my 4th time seeing it. It's the first time I didn't cry. Yeah, usually For Good gets me in the second act, but no, I didn't cry this time.
You're growing up,
but
the boys all
but no,
growing
yeah,
up.
fourth time. It doesn't get old. It's great. Wicked's good.
Still never seen it.
I'm still well, the movie comes out next year.
Yeah.
Now you might as well just wait for the movie at this point. So.
I probably will
Are
not.
they borrowing? Are they borrowing the cast, or is it?
No,
like
it's
recast?
Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are
God.
playing.
Okay. All right. Well,
yeah.
that answers that. Yeah.
Listen,
I actually read
Erivo's
the book
awesome.
when it
She's
first came
great.
out.
Ariana's. I mean, she's fine. She's a theater geek. I'll give it to her.
I think you had mentioned it
Ariana?
to me. Obviously, the music wasn't written by him, but you know who did the musical arrangements for Wicked was fucking Alex,
Macklemore. Yeah, I told. Yeah,
you told me that, and I always forget about that. I was just like, was he involved with literally every single
almost
seminal
every
musical of the last 20
single major like Dear Evan Hansen Wicked. So my brother used to get to go to see all of these shows in New York because Alex has 2 tickets to Alex Lacamoire. We've talked about in the podcast before. He's the composer from Hamilton. My brother works with his sister. So he has 2 standing tickets to every, not just the productions that are in New York, but the touring production. Anytime there is a show that he has worked on that is playing somewhere, he has 2 tickets reserved for him, which he has like
Eddie
a whole...
Money wrote a song about this situation.
This is exactly where that song comes from. It's amazing.
Yes.
But yeah, he did Wicked. So my brother saw Wicked with the with the second cast that came through on it on Broadway like back in the day. That was the first show that Lacamoire hooked him up with, but then he got to see Into the Heights and
With Adele
Spring
Dazeem?
Awakening. Yes, with Adele, and he didn't know
The original.
He saw Shoshana Bean, who is a much beloved Elphaba in the pantheon of Wicked actresses. But
in the pantheon of Elphaba.
yes, of Elphaba. Yes.
Yes.
She's the hot Jewish Elphaba. So there, she has quite a strong following. You can look her up on the interwebs. I got to actually see. I got really lucky this week. A friend of mine. From the show I did she has like season tickets to Broward Center, and she was supposed to go see a show with her mom, and her mom couldn't go. So I got to go see To Kill a Mockingbird at Broward Center. This is the Sorkin rewrite version of it that had Jeff Daniels in the original Broadway. This was Richard Thomas, who was John Boy in the Waltons. He was in It. He played Bill Densborough, like Old Bill. He's been in a gazillion TV shows, but I gotta say that I had heard like people trashing the rewrite and were like really pissed off with it. I thought it was a phenomenally good rewrite, and it not at all felt like a Sorkin. Like there was no masturbatory Sorkin speechifying in it. It was just, it felt exactly like the show. He just peppered in a lot of like a little bit more commentary and stuff on it that I thought was really good. And he has one amazing scene they put in with Atticus and the housekeeper, where like she's being kind of like, they have like this playful back and forth throughout the whole thing, and then she's getting pistier with him towards the end of the show, and he's like, "Why are you being so passive aggressive?" And she goes, "You know what you said to me when you said you took the case? You said you're welcome." And then she ties into him like the whole kind of white savior thing to him, and like the audience went nuts for it. But I thought it was awesome.
Well, I'll have a chance to see it because, of course, it's coming to the Kravis Center in the next season, as well as 6. So I get to see 6 for the 4th time.
And Hadestown, which I really want to see. I've heard nothing but good shit about Hadestown.
That's the one I actually want to see.
Yeah, one of the original members of Hadestown is one of my brother Ben's former classmates at BU, Amber Renee Gray.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
she's really talented.
That was fun when the one trip I did up to New York where I got to go see some shows was when Ken's brother was in school, and so he knew all of these actresses that were in. He's like, "Oh, you're going to see this production? I know this girl. Like she's in The Crucible, and like this one's in this thing." I was like, "That's pretty awesome." I was gonna say that we could talk about all of the Star Wars announcements, but I think the topic is gonna get us pretty full on this podcast. So we'll maybe hold off on all of the Star Wars celebration announcements till maybe our next podcast, unless anyone really wants to talk about the future of the Star Wars universe.
Well, considering nothing's it's not like anything's and nothing's being released this next week.
No one here wants to talk about the future of the Star Wars franchise.
Here's the one thing.
Quickly.
The one thing I would like to address is the last or most recent episode of The Mandalorian and how Slate came out. You see what oh gosh, our friend of the podcast, the Props to History guy,
Mike,
was like. Yeah. He basically was like Slade or somebody like that came out and said they were just like, having Jack Black and Lizzo in an episode of The Mandalorian sure is problematic and does not bode well for the rest of the series. And he's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it doesn't matter. It's Star Wars. Like, who cares if Jack Black and Lizzo are in a fucking episode of The Mandalorian?
I care.
Hey,
I care, and I'm glad that they were.
Yeah, exactly.
Where were those people bitching about B. Arthur back in the day? There was no one bitching about B. Arthur being in the Star Wars Christmas special back in the day. This is the same thing. It's stunt casting. They've always done it, and they'll continue to do it.
Yeah,
That's another thing. I always forget B. Arthur is Star Wars canon too. Thank you for that.
She's my favorite Star Wars canon.
Forgot.
all it shows you is that the IP is still strong enough that everybody wants to be in fucking Star Wars. And guess what? Yeah. Now they have as many properties, so everybody can be. It's just great. Yeah.
Well, and now with
it's very diffuse.
Yeah, and with like AI and deep fakes, they could bring B. Arthur characters back in in a Star Wars, in like maybe Mandalorian, like she's the big bad. We don't even know.
We are going to see Tom Cruise and B. Arthur face off in a Star Wars property, and they're both going to be AI deep fakes, but it's going to be canon.
So, I love that. Yeah. We're going to resurrect one dead person, and we're going to also just put this guy in who won't do it otherwise. So we're just going to fake him being in there. Amazing.
There you go.
So I'm excited about this topic. I think this is going to be very interesting to see what we all discuss in this, what counts in this. So this is going to be Ken's trial by fire as well.
Hey, happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Yes,
yeah.
happy Easter. Happy Passover.
Happy
everyone
Passover.
here and to our
Easter.
listeners who practice.
I have to ask: Did either of the two married gentlemen on the podcast wake up this morning and lean over to their wife and say, He has risen. Either of you?
So I made that joke last year funny enough, I already said to Paul, and he was like, "Oh, you did that too?" I was like, "Oh God, you actually
of course
really
he did.
That,
of course he
you?"
did. Of course he did.
I said it in jest last year, and then was like, "Haha, that's pretty funny." No, I did not.
I love that Paul is somehow haunting this podcast.
Here's the thing, Ken, do you have kids?
I have. We just had our first. He's 8 months old.
Oh, okay. Well, so you're not quite to the 9-year-old twin level that I'm at. No, I was up. I was up at. No. I mean, I just
strange
because I was
flex,
up at 5.
but okay.
I was up at. I'm next to the kids' bedroom.
Oh, right.
I was up at 5:15 hiding Easter eggs. So So I was doing that, and then I went for a run. So because I'm not going back to bed after all of that mess.
No, I'm still in the mode where I can. He'll be up in the middle of the night for like no reason, and I'll have to like be up with him trying to get him back down.
Oh yeah,
and then I can absorb all the media and all like rewatching all the films I want to rewatch without being judged by my wife. That's the mode that I'm in.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's I remember those. But I'm not nostalgic for it too because sleep deprivation's a thing.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's definitely going to be a baptism by fire for me in this episode.
Pun intended.
So, like, I'm definitely pun intended, and also I'm probably hallucinating most of it right now because I've not cut up on sleep at all in 8 months. It's really remarkable, and as Matt can tell you, I'm a person who I will do literally anything for 5 minutes more sleep. Anything.
Ken, we're not really here right now. You're just you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and you're going to be like, that was a strange nightmare.
You ever see Herman's head?
Favorite kind of hallucination. Yeah, hell yeah. I have.
Just like that.
And then he'll move the pillow and there'll be a nerd rope there, and then all of a sudden we'll cut to a close up. Watch it. What's real?
Yes. Wrong one. Not the right one. Shit. Damn it, Nick.
Oh, I
was on the wrong board.
You're gonna blame me for your fumbling of the soundboard?
Motherfucker.
Hey, damn right it is.
It's on Soundbank 2. You know I have to be prepared to be on Soundbank 2 and not Soundbank 1.
Soundbite 2. Are you with us? Soundbite 2. Come in.
Right, all right. Hold on, camera 3. Camera 3, go. Soundbank 3, go.
It's not rough, motherfucker.
Any more treats?
There we go. That pregnant pause, always good. All right, so our topic for this podcast today is, because it is Easter and we have just also gone through Passover, we are doing religious movies. Now, I was specifically vague with Ken. So one of the things that has changed a little bit in the show, as we noticed last episode when I was giving the rules that we put on for like episode 33, and we used to have a monumental list of rules when we would pick a topic, and we'd be like, it has to do this, and it has to, like, this doesn't count, and this does count, and blah, blah, blah. And then we realized it's much more fun for us to not put any parameters on it and then argue about it on air and make that part of the discussion as well of
Good radio.
what constitutes a religious movie. And this was something that was interesting to me as I was going through it, because I was kind of making some pockets of, you've kind of got religious horror films, you've got movies that center on the afterlife, you've got things that are looking at hell or heaven, and then you have the concept of death and ghosts. And it's interesting to think about how many of those things at some point knock into religion. And they're not a lot. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Well, no. I think that you have a really interesting point there, and because I think it's actually maybe good to sort of establish a baseline. And I don't know how comfortable you guys are with it about like how religious, like where are we on the spectrum of one being like you're completely agnostic, or like you just or you're a believer but completely non-practicing. It's just a cultural thing. To 10 like being ultra on that side. Because I think that at least gives us some sort of like understanding of where we come from. Because I'm like, I don't know, like a 3, basically.
Well, I think it also goes to your upbringing, right? So I know Ken's upbringing, and I have done Seder dinners at your house, and I've learned. What's great is I learned so much at their house that now it's like a party trick down here. If I'm dating someone that's Jewish, and I'm like, I'll just start rattling something off, and they're like, "Wow, you know more than our family does." And I'm like, "Yeah."
This was actually part of a very deliberate tactic from my family, Matt, to prepare you for Hollywood and the entertainment industry. We need to make sure that you're super comfortable with the tribe.
I am.
We do this. We do this a lot. His Yiddish is coming along.
It is. Listen. They groomed me something good over there, and they stuck me in all that good food, and then I just stayed for the prayer. It's great.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. You're still welcome anytime.
Like for example, like most of my Jewish friends, I feel like are more on like the culturally Jewish side. They're not really the 100%. Practicing. And the irony is like one of my good friends from high school, his father's a rabbi, and like his family is very, very obviously like into it's more than just a cultural thing around his house, and he's like he just completely matriculated away from that, but culturally it's like so embedded in him, like the whole like it was one of those people. It was just like, no, I have to marry a Jewish girl. I was just like, what like seriously, even though it's like he's like completely not, like he's not the type of person who goes to temple or whatever. It was like so kind of culturally embedded in him. It was really kind of interesting to have those conversations with him too, because he's just like, no, I don't practice, but I practice,
Yeah, but it is a cultural attachment. I mean, I know exactly, where he's coming from. I'd probably, like put myself into that category, although I did marry a shiksa, which is a non-Jewish woman,
well
for those
done.
who don't know. Thank you. And although this is actually, I was planning on talking about this based on the movies that I picked, or at least one in particular.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
I know you know it.
So it was the first one on my list that I knew when you were coming on the show.
I knew, I know Matt's got me dead to rights on this, but like I do think that there is
the passion of the Christ. No, I'm just
Ken loved that. He said funniest movie he'd seen all year. Just that barrel of laughs.
It is a laugh riot.
I was cracking when I wasn't jerking off. I was cracking up. Like it was amazing. So anyway,
Anyways, well, that's a great place to start.
I know,
well, I think
it's
it's
exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting also for all of us is none of us really are super religious in our adult lives, but I know there was a lot. I almost went to Lutheran seminary. Like there was a point in my life where that was a consideration I was having when I was 13 years old. Glad I did not make that decision. Also, terrible time to be like, yes, let's decide to give my life over to this cult. Religion, and be involved with it. I mean, I did like the Lutherans better than the other sects of Christianity, so it was like I was kind of happy with that side of it. But
there's always one that's worse, right? Like no matter where you're at, like on the spectrum, there's always one that like you can find that's worse. Also, you shouldn't be making any like
even the Mormons are like, well, at least we're not Seventh-day Adventists.
And they're like, at least we're not Scientologists.
Like, that's exactly right.
And Nick, I know Nick's history a little bit. Nick, why don't you tell us about your relationship with God?
You know, I didn't know
because I really like to meet her.
I've never seen Nick look so concerned. Yeah, it was a Dishwalla reference. Nick has looked so nervous this entire conversation. Like, they're coming for me next. They're coming for me.
He's about to be smite in the middle of this conversation.
I just didn't know that this was going to turn into a personal examination. I thought we were just going to talk about religion and film. Anybody could do that. I don't know we were baring our souls.
This is so deep, Nick. You don't have to bare your soul about your religious beliefs. However, I do find it fascinating. I find it super fascinating that the person who I feel like is the most distant from religion, Nick, on this podcast at least.
Oh, good for you.
I find it really interesting that you've always told me that the things that terrify you the most in film, in horror film, is religious horror. And it's that type of imagery and those types of movies are the ones that get to you. And I'm like, I always find that super fascinating.
Well, because it looks at it under a more realistic lens, and it forces you to ask the question, what if God was one of us? Just a stranger on the bus.
Wait, we're doing it. Both of you are going to do this.
We're going to do it all night. Oh, we got more. Don't worry. No, but it's true because to a certain extent, a lot of Catholicism is based on the fear of fire and brimstone, and you know, making sure you've confessed your sins so you got a clear shot to heaven, otherwise you're going to hell. And a big part of that is you know, ingrained in you even at an early age. I used to think that I saw Satan's face in my grandmother's grandfather clock that would go off at midnight every night, and I thought I could see a face and it was just a reflection of the light or whatever. But like, I was very convinced. Those images kind of stick with you, and you know, not going someplace nice when you die is a very scary thought as a kid, when you don't even really have the idea of permanence, or, you know, your life is all in front of you, and yet now you're thinking about this. So anytime there's Satan or hell, you know, in Inferno, literature, film, whatever it is, that's always the most compelling to me. And I mean, as just a student, you know, I would have, if I could have fucked around in college and minored in something, and thrown away some more money, I would have minored in religion, because it's just something that I think you learn a lot about people. It's almost part psychology, it's part mythology. It's it talks about what brings people together, what tears them apart. It's a lot to learn. And on top of that, you know, some religions have fucking monsters and shit. It's metal. Religion is totally metal. I don't subscribe to it, but I love it. You know,
you should still. I mean, you really should just go to a Unitarian Universalist church service.
Maybe it should.
It's badass, because like one week they'll have like the speaker is going to be like Muslim, and then the next week the speaker is like Buddhist, and the next week the speaker is Christian, and the next week after that it's always like this completely like weirdly secular like ideology, and just talking about like, you know, common.
So is it like is like the feeling of the room there like a college course, or is it you know, a praising, or is
it like a college dorm?
No. It's more like you're there to learn and to kind of explore. Like it's
Okay,
all about
I'm
sort
into
of
that.
It's all about self-exploration. That's why I
into
would
that.
consider myself a
There's a lot of
Unitarian Universalist.
there's a lot of experimentation,
I don't know,
and
it just-
you
it
set
just-
your
to me-
boundaries. What are you comfortable
Yeah.
with? What do you want to touch?
I mean,
Just
it's just-
do as much as you want.
Listen, I mean,
The
it's
key
all
is
about
communication.
It's kind of like a class, and then we take our clothes off, and then we light the pyre on fire, and we start the bloodletting, and then we do the
Before
animal
I forget
sacrifice.
it, I
That's
have
the
to
second
say,
half.
I have to say, Nick, my favorite combination of words to ever come out of your mouth in this podcast are some of them have monsters and shit, which is so amazing. Like it's just one of those things that you don't think about out of context. But I mean, yeah, that is what we talk
the
about in
first-
religion.
the
They
first-
have monsters.
And
There are
the first-
monsters.
the very first movie that came to mind was not even The Omen or the Emma Watson movie about Noah, but it was Clash of the
on my
Clash of
worst
the
list.
Titans. Clash of the Titans, man. That's like
Yeah.
the best religious movie ever made. You got Perseus, you got Gorgon, it's got all the best of Greek mythology, like all the heavy hitters. Zeus,
It's the hits. It's the
none
hits.
of the lame ones. You know, it was
And
awesome.
I also love that, like, so outside of this podcast, probably there's a bunch of people that are like, well, mythology's not religion. Those are just fake gods and monsters out there. That's not real religion. Those aren't the real ones.
Potato, potato.
Oh, it's real religion. Yeah,
I love
it's
it.
just
I
not-
like that.
It's
So
not.
that's why
For
we don't
those-
put the rules on here anymore.
For those who don't know, Scientology exists. So if you're going to delineate that has some sort of more credence than the fact that there are hundreds of gods and goddesses that are, rule different sectors of and elements, then no,
But when you think about it, how brilliant,
the flying spaghetti monster has its own, its own religion. So it's
but like Christianity, right? Like figured it out, right? Anything too new, like Scientology, is bullshit, and anything too old is bullshit. Like they got a god for everything. That's ridiculous.
These people are still reading the Old Testament. Don't they know there's a new one that's much more improved? Come on now.
You know that Old Testament. We don't read that so much anymore.
We
They made a
happen to
sequel. It's
fall-
way better. It's The Empire Strikes Back.
We happen to fall in the sweet spot where it's just believable enough. Now, go ahead and drink your Savior's blood. It actually turns into his real blood. And also eat his flesh. And also, it actually turns into his
Sorry,
real
no,
flesh.
your people believe that. My people don't believe that bullshit. That's my favorite part, by the way. The Lutherans. Oh, go ahead, Ken.
Yo, sorry, I just want to jump. Like, this is something, speaking as a Jew, like the Jew on the podcast, I had no idea growing up what the difference was between Protestants and Catholics. And it wasn't until I took actually a history of public education course in
A couple
college
screws.
where, like, I mean, a couple.
Just a few. Just a few.
It's really interesting, this like the break over the Eucharist, and then you can look at iconography with like the Eastern Orthodox Church, like Christians, like the fragmentation of the Christian Church and the anxieties that produced. I think you see a lot of those echoes in especially in religious horror.
And Boleyn, hey man, sex sells,
Yeah.
I mean, come on, Church of England.
It is. I just always loved that because like it is. You're completely correct, Nick, in the idea that there's always this pointing at like, oh no, but those are the crazy people because they believe this one thing, and then then you're holding on threads. But that was the Lutherans thing. Always, the Catholics and Lutherans just still fucking so salty against one another. It's hysterical to me. But their whole thing was like, those dumb Catholics think that it's transubstantiation and it's turning into his blood and stuff, and it's not a symbol. Those dumb Catholics, what do they think? Like, all right, now everyone like kneel and sing together.
That's the way that it was explained to me, is like Catholics, think of Protestants as apostates and like, they're heretics, and Protestants think of Catholics as dinosaurs, like you're still worshiping in this way. You still believe in these magical properties or whatever. Yeah. I mean,
I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, I think the Lutherans recovered their asses both ways. So they believe both at the same time, which was the first time I was like, hi, I don't understand. And she goes, well, it's both a symbol and it is transformed. And I go, no, I still don't understand. Like, am I eating a cracker or I'm eating a guy? Like, what are like, I need to know the difference because this is important to me. And they're like, it's both. And I'm like, fuck.
Why not both?
And if you're And if you're not satisfied with that answer and you keep answering with questions, Matt, then you have what my grandma says is a Jewish soul. And it's time for you to just come over. Just come.
You're like,
That-
wait, Jesus was not a cracker.
Your
Jesus
mom
was definitely Middle Eastern.
Your mom did
Jesus
say that
was a
to me
Jew.
once. Yes.
A Middle Eastern Jew, not
No.
a cracker.
No, Judas was the only one of them that was a Jew. All the rest of them were Christians, and then there was one, the one Jewish one told on him, and it was really
he was
bad.
a Jew before he became a Christian.
Yeah. No.
Who said that?
No, this was there was a girl in my brother's Bible class. She literally she goes, I don't understand. Wasn't Jesus a Christian? And everyone's just like, well, okay.
And like isn't
she now leads a church.
and so Jewish people obviously don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God, and that's what kind of.
But they do believe he was a dude.
But hold on, let me get through this. Yahweh is the same. So the big guy is the same guy, and then Yahweh is also in Arabic religion. Like it also like there is a lot of synergy.
Along with all the other prophets, right? Like, so when you were saying, like, you've got this Goldilocks zone of like Christianity's got it like right. It's like, kind of new enough, but not old, like not too old to be weird or whatever. But Islam thinks of itself. The Quran is the third, it's part 3, right? Like there's that joke in Book of Mormon about like what, like, there's
a part 3 to the Bible,
like, and it's Return of the Jedi. I'm interested. Yeah, like that's actually the Quran, right? Like that happens before obviously the Book of Mormon, which is from the mid 19th century in New York.
When the Jews sailed to New York from Africa.
Yeah, of course, like from the Middle East, and I believe that ancient Jews. Yes. Absolutely. Islam. It's a continuum, like Judeo-Christian, Islamic, right? It's
that's
part
the big three.
And
as all from the same neighborhood.
And as a kid, I didn't get that, and it wasn't even really clock until adulthood. It was to me, it was like, we all believe in a different God.
Right.
We all believe it is so everything's so different, and really, it is just many religions are united under that one Yahweh God, but they fractured along the way, even within Christianity, within
100%.
You got Orthodoxy. It's really crazy how you could see a point in time where everybody kind of had the same God, and then it's like that's not going to stand because that makes us all we're all unified, we're all together. That's not going to stand. We got to find some differences. We got to bury the right ones.
And then some asshole comes around and says midichlorians. And like, throws everything.
We don't want to talk about Star Wars in this episode, Ken, because there are no religious allegories in Star Wars.
Shut your mouth.
No religious allegories in Star Wars. And I will say that I think that religion has probably the only fan base that's more toxic than Star Wars.
That's a great point.
Well, I think that fracturing. I think the fracturing also happens based on exactly what you're saying, Nick, in these conversations. Is I don't even know that sometimes it's conscious. I think basically what happens. Someone's following religion, and they're like, yeah, but I want to get divorced and fuck another woman. They're like, all right, you got a new church. And like, so that church breaks off. And then someone's like, I don't think that's really the body of Christ. And that's not blood. I just want to have wine and crackers at church. Like, there you go. You're Lutheran. And like, people just keep picking the shit that they don't want to believe in. They're like, all right, well, now I'm in a new church.
It's like once there's a change like that, other people are like, oh shit, you can do that? Okay. Yeah. Like, yes, I also want a divorce.
There's a weird sect, the one that I'm seeing, I will not name names, but it's a person I know, but the sect of the uber religious gay Republican men. This is like a very like they call it the log cabin Republicans that are like basically we're fiscally conservative. They're super religious, they're super gay, and they're super Republican. I'm like, you guys gotta pick an identity because you're just grasping at thing. It's like a Family Guy episode. Like there's nothing ties together. It doesn't make any sense to me, but it's crazy.
That actually sounds ancient Greek in a lot of ways. But
yeah.
A lot of wrestling. It's a lot of wrestling.
A giant group of robed men.
Yes.
Disrobed men.
Who like.
Yeah. I have a question though. Like, so considering that we're all kind of coming from different perspectives, what for each of you was the movie that you first remember feeling or like understanding the religious subtext or the just full on text? Given that, because I have a very definitive one that I saw, because I was not I was always going to church with my grandparents, whether it was on my dad or on my mom's side or with my dad, but my mother and stepfather, who I lived with, Christian as they are, they're Episcopalian. We didn't go to church, so wasn't like raised on like an every week basis going to church. But I remember seeing a movie that was very like heavily religiously intonated, which I'll get to in a second. But what was that for you, Matt? Do you remember?
I have two honestly that pop into my head that I put on my list, and they're two. One of them Ken might bring up. I don't think anyone is going to bring the main one up that I have, which is Leap of Faith. Leap of Faith is a Steve Martin movie from the 90s with Lucas Haas and I forget who the actress is in it. But he basically plays
Deborah
a
Winger or something.
I think it is Deborah Winger. He plays basically a traveling con man that runs a religious like festival, and he goes into this small town. It's basically the Music Man, right? He rolls into this small town. He's going to fleece these dumb rubes out of it. You know, he's this con man that does a religious thing. But then he meets this kid who's the Lucas Haas, who's got cerebral palsy. And he's like, I want to be cured. Like, I want to make me like be able to walk again. And there's this whole crisis of faith of this guy that's been conning these people, and then this like actual like, and he's faking all of these miracles in the town. And that's a whole part of the gimmick. Like, he makes the Virgin Mary cry, like the statue cry, does all these things, and then at the end, this actual miraculous thing does happen, and you don't know. You know, it's this kind of this idea of what what is religion, what is faith, what is all these things. But that movie was played in my house a lot, like bizarrely a lot of time. My mom loved that movie, and I was totally
about you.
It's not on my list, and it's kind of deliberately not on my list for kind of a few reasons, because there's not a lot of, to answer this question, it really has to be like Jewish media. And even though like there's lots of Jews who are making movies and writing movies and directing movies, there's not a lot of like Jewish films in terms of like real religious themes. There's films about Jews like Schindler's List, in the way that like Spotlight, has Catholicism in it, but it's not really about Catholicism, right?
Right.
And stuff like that. But for me, it's Fiddler. For a lot of Jews, I think it's Fiddler.
That was my second movie. I thought you would put that on there.
I didn't. I didn't. I found. I think you'll like my list, but for Fiddler, like my dad. So Matt knows this, but you guys don't. I have an older dad. He's going to be 96 in September. He's a New Yorker. He's born in a taxi cab in Manhattan in 1927. That's not a joke. And he's a New Yorker. He went to shows all the time. So he's got he saw Zero Mostel, like on Broadway. He saw we've got the LP. He's got the original somewhere, like the original cast recording. So we grew up with that, and then obviously, actually, like Tevye, the guy that played Tevye, just passed away.
Yeah,
in the movie, right? Yeah, Topol. For me, it's
cool.
So for me, it's Fiddler. It's like I got everything they're saying. Like I know, my dad's mother is from like that town. Like we still don't know the name of it, because we just know it's near Odessa, which in Ukrainian terms could be like in Belarus,
Sure.
Who knows, back then, some sort of thing. But in terms of subtext and kind of like getting it was Fiddler first.
Well, there was a reason I put that on my list, by the way. I'm sorry because there's a really funny postscript on that story, because I did Fiddler in the 9th grade, and I was in that show with Ken's dad. And Ken's dad was the only Jewish cast member, and do you know who he played? They essentially dressed him up like the Pope. And he was supposed to be like his honor. It was not supposed to be the Pope, but that was the costume they had rented. So he has this full on Pope hat, robes, and comes out, and he's the only. There's not a single Jew on stage other than the one Christian character in the show, and he loved it. Your dad come out and he'd bless everyone and do the Pope wave. Amazing.
Yeah, people lost their minds. Yeah, it was great. That's when my brother and I arrived at like our high school, we tripled the Jewish population. It was great.
Nick, what was your exposure to religious films, and why was it The Omen?
Yeah, it was The Omen.
You made me watch that for the first time. Do you remember that?
I remember. I was so excited because I saw it. I think my uncle definitely showed it to me a little before when I probably should have. I think I was probably like 8 or 9, and it was the first time that I felt like the religion that I've been raised with could be a Hollywood movie, and that's when the disconnect kind of started, and then Dogma in high school kind of cemented like my path. But yeah, and that was not only the start of that, and like connecting your own religion to a Hollywood movie with decapitations and a place that was
decapitation. That
Yeah,
caught
like-
me way off guard.
and it was crazy. You know, it was a nanny jumping out the window, hanging herself. Lots of crazy imagery. A child Satan. It just, you know, to me, like that is what would be scary. And also a part of me is especially scared of religion and horror, especially when it comes to like the Antichrist or Satan. Why I'm like drawn to satanic imagery, because what is there a scarier thought than like in your life, like saying, you know, oh, that's a bunch of bullshit. You know, I'm glad I don't believe in that nonsense. and then you meet Satan and he's real. And, you know, you come face to face with the fact that not only have you're wrong, you have to eat crow a little bit. And now the most terrifying thing that you thought was bullshit actually exists in the world. And like that premise to me is super, super scary. But, you know, I think probably the most important thing to tie together my thoughts were Harold Cronk's God's Not Dead. I was not aware that if you took a philosophy course in college, you were required to write a signed statement that said God is dead. And that movie taught me to stand up for myself and hold a class of philosophy students hostage until I stood up for my beliefs. So Harold
Is this
Kronk,
a Kevin Sorbo reference?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it might be.
Guess how many God's Not Deads there are?
So many.
There are so many. There's so many. There's like six of them.
This is like my list of like worst religious movies of all time are all in the same genre of like the Kevin Sorbo, Kirk Cameron, you know,
persecuted Christians.
He made quite a career.
God, yeah, so persecuted.
That's the only plot. It's just like he goes to college to expand his mind, and how does he get thanked? A professor that makes him admit the first thing on the docket. He hasn't even handed out the syllabus yet. But you sign a document and say that God is dead. What? Is this happening at our colleges?
In fairness, Ken is a teacher of history at our high school, and he does require this of his students. And it's actually every day, every single day, they've got to do another one.
Yeah, and I sacrifice their children to bake into my hamantashen. You know, like that's called the blood libel, and there are people who still believe that, by the way. So, you know,
delicious,
sprinkling some goodness on there.
Delicious
pastries.
It's
the magic ingredient. Come on, it's how grandma made it.
I'm so hungry. All right, okay, go, Ben.
Well, no, I was just gonna say the movie that I remember
made from stem cells.
Seeing too young, as well. The thing that always, because like obviously like you have like, oh, people who are godly, and people who aren't godly are, you know, they're, you know, gonna go to hell, or they haven't been saved, or whatever it is. But the movie I remember I saw it at a young age because my dad owned it, was The Mission. Richard Joffe's The Mission.
Wow.
And I remember it so vividly because I was so confused. I was like, wait, so the good guy is like an asshole, kind of, which is like the good guy, Robert De Niro's character is a murderer. He is a thief. He's a mercenary. He's done awful things, and yet he becomes the hero. Like there's the godly man, the Jeremy Irons character, but meanwhile it's this other guy. It's about like how far, like what does it take to be redeemed? And it's not even the fact that he is religiously redeemed, and the fact that he is saved technically by Jeremy Irons or by even religion. It's that
I thought he had to get, no, he had to get bathed in the waters of Mandalore before he could be.
Right. Yeah, of course. No, but because he takes a stand to protect the people that Jeremy Irons is there essentially to convert and protect, and gives his life essentially in the service of God. And he does, but he doesn't have to be an agent of God. And so that whole thing was very, like, it opened up some ideas for me at a very young age, where I was just like, well, what does it mean to be religious? Like, do you have to be like a practicing, you know, go to church every Sunday to be a religious person? No, you don't have to be. Like, do you, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, what you do, what kind of religion, and it's basically like one of those things about when you come to a moral compass at some point, like, what are you going to stand up for what's right or what's good, which ultimately, let's face it, that's what religion really is it's just a code of conduct.
Sure.
That is there for all
That
of us,
that
is
is
a golden rule for
ignored.
all of us.
That is
that's
ignored by the
constantly
most
ignored.
stringent
It's
followers.
two things.
Yes,
Code of conduct,
exactly.
and it's also what is beyond this. What is
Yes,
after
exactly.
this?
Well, no.
And so
But-
so that's what I think. I think there's a movie for all of us that probably was one of the first times we were exposed to this discussion. We probably didn't get it watching it the first few times. And you think about it, it's a movie we talk about in the podcast almost every episode. And it's the one that I put on my list, and that's Ghostbusters. Because Ghostbusters has that discussion between Winston and Ray in the car, where he's like, "You ever think about what this means? Why business has been so good? End times?" And he starts quoting the fucking scripture. Like that was I remember I didn't understand it, but I just remember also the way that scene is directed, the way the music is turning. We're getting towards that kind of that third act shift that's popping in there. It is a deliberately built in scene that I fucking love in that movie because it's weird.
By the way, straight from The Omen, shit starts getting weird and whatever, you roll with it until one person goes, actually, if you look in the scripture, it could be interpreted this way. And then you get that, into the second act moment. That is The Omen when the professor from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, he's the photographer in The Omen, comes up to what's his name, Gregory Peck, and says, "Let's read the Bible in the sea of turmoil." Now, many scholars have believed the sea of turmoil to be the world of religion, and then it cuts to Gregory Peck like, "What?" It's amazing.
I love, Nick, that it's probably why you love this property so much, because there's one property that does the exact reverse of what you're doing. It's how you would write it, and it's Midnight Mass. Midnight Mass Mass flips the genre on its head. It says it's a horror story, but we're going to mask it as a religious story because the people don't get it. And instead of them being like, maybe they're vampires out there, like angels, definitely a fucking angel. This is God's work. Got to be an angel out there. It's the anti-Omen. I love that. I've never put that together, that it is the reverse of that trope.
It's a great point, and you're absolutely right. And Flanagan does that. And I love tropes getting thrown on their heads before you can figure out it's coming. It's a very rewarding experience to have as a viewer of any media. And I think that also that's something that just lends itself to horror, and just the way that it's set up, and it's a little easier to pull off. And it's why it all goes together. It's peanut butter and jelly.
It is
baby.
funny though. It did crack me up because I was also, when I say that like the dumb people in the show are doing that, I was one of those dumb people that it took me probably 3 episodes longer than it should have to be like, oh, this is a vampire movie. I was just like, fucking angels are mean. Like this is like I really, and then and I think we were talking about it like on air.
Angels are mean, man.
No, we were talking about on air, and you were like, well, it's obviously vampires. And I was like, yeah. I'll be. Any moron could figure that one out. Jesus Christ! Oh my God.
Since we're on TV, Ken, did you watch Unorthodox?
I haven't actually.
Oh,
okay. I know.
I was about to say, just because you were talking about how there isn't a whole ton of like the sort of Jewish meat, that I was about to say that's a really great recent example of basically a true story.
Yeah.
But also because they walk a very fine line in there, because they don't want to like completely throw the Hasidim in like a completely bad light. Sure.
Yeah.
And so you have these really great characters. Like obviously these characters are like very caring characters, and they want to do the best thing. And then you have this kind of other kind of shadier side of everything.
Sure.
I found that a very and there are lots of films I feel like that kind of walk that line as well too. Like Witness is a good one.
It's on my list.
Where you have you know, it's a problematic kind of clashing between cultures. Again, like that's the thing I'm really attracted to when it comes to these religious movies, is when you have somebody who is either completely extricated from this religion or struggling with it, and it's like this kind of battle. Like I said, the mission is totally that. The Witness is anything where you have kind of this, where it's a sort of a more of a meeting of worlds. A lot of the stories that I have are ones that kind of follow that.
It's a great point. There's a lot of, you can create a lot of tension with those types of confrontations between cultures. And I think, man, I should have thought about Witness. I just rewatched it, like just randomly a few weeks ago with my wife, and we're like, man, this is good.
Oh, really? It's a great movie.
Yeah,
It's so
great.
I've
it's
I've
great. It
witnessed and
really
Leap of
hangs
Faith.
together.
Lucas Haas was my religion
They had the
like
collective
poster
history,
child
yeah.
for all of these movies of these conflicts of shit.
Wait, was Lucas
Yeah.
Haas the kid in Witness?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't even know that.
That's how when I saw Leap of Faith, I was like, oh, it's a kid from Witness.
reincarnated into Cody Smith McPhee. Like I think of them as like the same, kind of person. It's like, this is like a lanky child.
Lucas Haas would have been a great young Nightcrawler. This is
Oh,
true.
yeah.
I have another one that I thought was kind of interesting that popped in my head, and it is kind of that kind of clashing of culture because it's not really about religion at all. I do find it funny that it's also Robert De Niro though. But you know the movie Sleepers, which is like the courtroom drama.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so the whole I find that movie really fascinating because these kids were all brought up Catholic, and it was obviously the church was that they were all altar boys.
That's what they had.
It's interesting that the priest who it cannot tell a lie, or is not supposed to be able to tell a lie, is the one who basically vouches for them.
He perjures himself on the Bible.
He perjures himself against God and man. And that whole because there, and that's another one of those whole things where it's just like, what is the true evil here, and
this
obviously
is exactly exactly your point from before. Yeah,
exactly. Like when they kill Kevin Bacon's character, and they're just like, it's like, was it justified? Like, absolutely, it was justified. And even the priest, even a Catholic priest, could see like this was,
It's Matt. That's some Matt Murdoch justice right there. That Nick was just holding up his Matt Murdoch.
Damn right it is.
Man, I missed that. And like for the devil of Hell's Kitchen, that's exactly it. Like, what's a lawyer vigilante? Like, that's the other thing about religious movies and religious, kind of books about religion or whatever that give you, which is that not just the external tension, like we were talking about cultures confronting each other, but also internal tension. How does like someone like Matt Murdoch, like I'm a huge Matt Murdoch fan.
I've been meaning to get you and Nick together on the podcast here because this could be like an hour and a half discussion right now.
Yeah, we can do this. Beautiful. It goes back to what you were saying before, Ben, about like, well, there's faith, there's religiosity, and there's morality. There's also ethics. I think one of the things, and when I spring my list or whatever, one of like my number one.
But Nick, what are the difference between morals and ethics? So sorry, we're election fans here. So productive.
That's so good.
No, keep going, Ken. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Judicial, executive. You have these internal tensions that I think some filmmakers are interested in exploring, and then some are much more interested in the external stuff. Ethics are external, morality is internal, right? At least the way that I understand it. I don't know. I forget the election bit on this, on this kind of note, but absolutely right. Like Sleepers is a great example of, an institution. And how important like religion is as an institution. That takes it back to kind of spotlight, like the institutional power of religion and how that can like hold communities together or destroy them.
Well, and I think there's another side to this and one of the reasons why I didn't put a lot of parameters on it, because I think there's a lot of interesting discussions to be had here, because you could say like, do ghosts automatically make something religious because it's talking about life after death or something after death or whatever? Probably not. I think Ghostbusters is a good one that floats those lines because it addresses it. But then you have the idea of faith. So you have the Lost thing. Lost is science versus faith. I would say Lost is a very religious property in general. It is constantly constantly looking at that.
Oh, Matt, let me tell you.
Don't poke there.
So before we that, but there were certain
I don't
films.
know if you know this, but I spent the last 2 hours watching Lost.
I know.
And
I dare poke that bear, but let's.
Man, the science and faith duality, the dark and the light. That's honestly what makes Matt Murdoch great. Sorry, you're gonna put a pin in this because now I got to get this out. The fact that he is so religious is absolutely why, like that being a core thing about him is absolutely why he's my favorite superhero. Like right up there with Spidey. And it's not my truth, and yet. That duality and that struggle, I think that like atheists can give religious people shit They can say, "Oh, you get to believe this, and it's like the security blanket, and it's taking away accountability, and must be nice, right?" And then when they inevitably break with their values, then it's hypocrite. Right? But to a certain extent, atheists take some of that societal pressure off. Like Steve Harvey famously said, "I wouldn't even talk to an atheist because they have no moral barometer." He believes they just simply don't have it unless you have a higher power, right? And obviously that's misguided.
It only comes from religion. That's the only source.
Because it's subjective unless you have a higher being defining what is right and what is wrong.
Meanwhile, every arbitrarily created religion has the same set of codes somehow.
Right. Also,
I think this is innately
also,
built.
And they all have a flood.
And what the fuck is Steve Harvey gonna do? I don't want to know what Steve Harvey's capable of if he finds out there is no God. And he's like, fuck, now I'm just gonna go kill motherfuckers. Hey, I can do whatever I want.
But see, all I was saying is to a certain extent, it's easy to pile on a super religious person and this code of conduct and 10 commandments and whatever, right? But when you are agnostic or an atheist, it is taking the pressure off, because then when you fail, when you sin, it's just a normal, flawed, lost sheep that is expected to stumble, and so the pressure isn't quite there. So when I see someone like Matt Murdoch, who purposely puts him in position to be at odds with his religion and his life as a superhero, and leans into it he somehow manages not to be a hypocrite by just equally embracing both sides at the same time. That would normally be a contradiction that I wouldn't be able to get past, but he's just such a well-written character that it makes sense. Which brings me to Keeping the Faith, starring Ben Stiller and Ed Norton.
The number one on all of our. I knew it. There were two movies
on my list.
There were two movies I knew everyone was going to bring up, and it was going to be Keeping the Faith and Dogma. They were the only absolutes I had.
Neither on my list.
But hold it. But before
neither on yours.
That's funny.
Keeping the Faith came up on 3 out of 4. I thought this was just honestly, I know there's Catholic to it, but it's, to me, I always thought of it as a Jewish movie.
It's it's just a phenomenally good movie, no matter what. It's the movie I wish I'd written.
It's funny.
Everybody's mom loved that movie, so it was perfectly fine to watch over and over again. You could rent that from Blockbuster without any sort of repercussion.
Even with the vibrating phone scene.
Especially because of the vibrating phone scene.
They would package Keeping the Faith and Rat Race to moms. It was a 2-for-1 deal.
Yeah,
Ben,
it was like the Frampton Comes Alive of '90s mom movies.
Now, Ben, I have a question for you before we get into the overt movies about religion. I'm curious because there are two movies that popped up.
I'm sorry to interrupt again. I fear we're getting away from Peter Frampton here. I don't know what you're about to say.
I am definitely getting away from Peter Frampton. I'm so sorry. You can. That's on the next. Frampton Comes Alive's next podcast. All right. So
Frampton comes alive again.
Comes alive. That's right. He is reborn. So Ben, in your kind of discussion of religious movies and what might not be right at, there's two movies that popped in my head that I feel are very similar themes. And they are not overtly necessarily directly about religion, but I feel they are religious movies. And they are Take Shelter and Field of Dreams. And both of those movies are not, there's no one mentioned, Field of Dreams might say God at some point, maybe. I think there might be
they talk about heaven a lot.
What's heaven like? This is Iowa. Yeah. So that one probably, but Take Shelter is a really interesting one because I was like,
no mention of heaven.
No, not at all. But it's a movie. It's about someone doing something based on a blind faith of something and acting in a certain way.
Well, so that kind of falls into the same thing as Frailty for me, which is Frailty is another movie where it's just like, okay, what is the, and there is a Deus Ex Machina in that movie, obviously, which is for those who haven't seen Frailty, fantastic movie directed by the late great Bill Paxton.
And here's the spoiler.
I don't even want to spoil it.
The spoiler is that Bill Paxton died.
That's the spoiler. He was the late great Bill Paxton. In case you didn't know, R.I.P. Bill Paxton.
Yeah. Sorry to break that news to you. We did break Coolio on air, but we're a little late on Paxton.
Yeah. For those who haven't seen the premise is that a kind of every man who has two sons and he lives a very normal life, a single dad, gets a vision from God that he has to go kill demons, and these demons look like normal people. And so one of the kids falls under the spell of this. And the other kid's just like, you're just killing random people and you're like a serial killer. And that's the whole premise of the movie, which is a fantastic, you know, it's a great, and it's got some great twisty turns and fun stuff in there. But it's the exact same thing. I'm just like, what's the perceived, like the perception of your religion or what you're acting on versus, which is that's take shelter as well. The people think you're crazy. People think that you're insane, or are you willing to take this kind of blind leap of faith, understanding that it is going to make you crazy or make you feel crazy because you believe in it so innately or so wholly.
So a spin-off of that same question, right, dude? So I think we're kind of answering a little bit that these faith versus whatever, they are inherently religious adjacent, whether they actually even mention or not. Now,
sure.
Now, what is your answer to that same question for movies about cults? But they're not necessarily religious cults. They're just cults.
What's an example of?
I'm trying to think if there is
Blue Oyster.
No. I don't know that I have. I mean, if we're talking about like the Koresh stuff, that is more mired in religious, actual religion on there. But like, I was just kind of curious.
Once upon a time in Hollywood.
Like, that's the cult that's out on the ranch, the West Ranch.
Manson's cult.
Yeah,
that's the actual Manson cult, right? Which is I don't really know if there's an eschatology to Manson or what what that was saying or whatever. But
I don't really feel like, I mean, to me those don't.
I just wanted to be an asshole and say our religion's cults. I was being Nick for just I put my Nick hat on for one question.
Yeah.
No, I think that those lines where you have all this kind of like religious iconography. One of my favorite lines in an Interview with the Vampires, where he's just like crucifixes. He goes, actually, crucifixes. He's like, actually, I'm quite fond of crucifixes.
Yes.
Just like some very funny stuff where you kind of taking again some tropes and throwing them on their head on certain cases.
Sure.
But yeah.
Interview with the Vampire, by the way, super religious movie.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise didn't know.
He didn't even know he was filming that movie.
That's a great Bowfinger line.
That is the Bowfinger line.
But no, Interview with the Vampire is a really interesting one. That is a very religion heavy movie.
Very, very religiously based movie.
Yeah, because vampires are really religious. They're religiously based. Also, like you could say zombies, right? Like zombies are, they're a product of Caribbean and Haitian, ideas about voodoo, about like slaves who are slaves in the afterlife. Right? Like the worst thing you can do in the New World when slavery is a thing all through like the Americas and like, through into Brazil and stuff. The worst thing you can tell a slave is that there won't be a release from death and that you'll be enslaved in the afterlife. That's the original, that's the genus and species of like zombieism. So yeah, absolutely. If you're talking about like, you can't have a character like a vampire.
I thought it was just rage. I thought it was just rage infected monkeys.
I mean, it's also that. It's also that.
It can be both. I had no idea about that history of the zombie thing because that's actually super fascinating.
I'm sorry. I totally torpedoed that very salient point there.
No.
And then what wasn't there even some sort of a reaction to a drug or something that would it could have been an urban legend as an add-on to this, but in Haiti there was something that was literally making people like wander mindlessly or I think there's almost something to it, unless that was
there's like that movie The Serpent and the Rainbow. That was another movie I watched way too young. That's what you're talking about.
That's what it's based on. Yes.
They basically would bury people alive and they were taking this drug that would then they would reanimate, but they weren't actually reanimating. They were basically, it was like mimicking signs of death, and then they were burying these people, and then they're like, nope, not dead yet. And then they would like be reborn out of there.
What you're saying is like in the Firefly universe with the packs that they give to everybody on Miranda is supposed to make people better and less aggressive, but turns 5% of the population into flesh-starved assholes. Okay, so now Serenity is also
Assholes is the most metal band name I have ever heard.
Assholes.
Oh my god, I would watch that band tomorrow.
Album name.
Or a porno.
One
of the two.
I'm in for either.
Yeah,
I'm watching both.
I'll give them. I'll give them both a shot.
Let me tap that into the porn algorithm today and see what pops up.
Flesh-starved assholes. Too.
And I don't know if I mentioned this, but I spent the last couple hours watching Lost. There's an episode there where those remember the Twilight Zone episode that fans hated out of nowhere.
The Nikki and Paolo episode. Yes.
Yeah, we never saw, and they got bit by something that made them appear to be dead. So they buried them alive, and they died. That's kind of like what that movie was. That's what it was about. It was this paralyzing agent. So when they thought they were coming back, they just were never dead to begin with, and they would be clawing themselves out of. What's really
funny?
I think I figured out what I was thinking.
It is very funny that
I need to confirm.
I think you you 100% were. It was exactly what I was thinking of. But it is funny that J.J. Abrams seems to have quite a hard on for that idea because he also ends the Alias series with a very Twilight Zone thing where Arvin Sloane is taken the potion to live forever, and he gets caught in a cave in, and he's alone by himself, and he's like stuck in a cave. And Ken and I always just be like, it's that Twilight Zone episode of like the guy that has the library of books and then his glasses breaks. He's like, there was time now.
Yeah. And you know what?
Yeah, I forget the actor. It's like Burgess Meredith.
Yeah, it is Burgess Meredith.
Yeah. Yeah.
That also reminds me of Last Crusade. We bring that up every podcast too. But I really can't. You cannot downplay the gravity of the Joneses' religion.
That's a huge one.
But they're literally searching for the cup of Christ. But it's also talking about how he was raised, and he slaps his face when he says, "It really is."
He blasphemed.
That movie. Yeah, and it's played to comedic effect, but. You really believe
what is that, Ben?
This is the AI that came in when I typed in flesh-starved assholes. That's our album cover. This is great.
Right. The other picture was Jenna Jameson.
Pass. Yeah, I like my idea more. I'm just going to put that out there.
If you would like a NFT of the flesh-starved asshole, please.
We will sell pint glasses $49.99 plus shipping and handling.
We'll give you a sneak peek of our flesh-starved assholes if you join our Patreon. $15 a month.
Yes, a 16-inch by 16-inch full replica of the album cover. Then
actually, flesh-starved assholes. Flesh-starved assholes is what we call our super fans. They're they're the whack pack. They're the flesh-starved assholes in the peanut gallery. All right, so Ken, why don't you lead us off with some of a couple of ideas of films that you kind of put on your list. Because I know that we've been bouncing around through a lot of things. So tell us one on there that you're passionate about.
Well, first of all, I'm flattered to have been invited on. I've been looking forward to it. I'm, it's really great to be here and to put faces with these names.
Well, time's up, Ken. So Nick,
can you wrap it up? Jesus Christ, Ken.
Where's the music? You have to start playing them off.
Play me off. And I'd like to thank the Academy.
Great.
So,
thanks for coming.
So I have, it goes to what we were saying before. Is it a religious movie or is it a movie about religion? I mean, mountains of crappy movies in this genre. I totally didn't think horror. I totally, I don't know the way my mind works. My number one is A Serious Man. This is, to me, the most religious movie or the most interesting movie about religion that I've seen. And it's from probably my favorite filmmakers of their generation, from the Coen brothers, who are finally they've almost been, I don't know, I wouldn't say avoiding their Judaism and their Jewishness or whatever, and that's everyone's journey. I mean, I definitely had a long period of my life where I was, Jewish identity was, it's always kind of, we were talking about this at the top of the show, when you're an American Jew, you get to assimilate kind of however much you want. I have family in France and in Israel who are Jews. They wear the yarmulkes, they keep kosher, all that kind of stuff. So the Coen brothers, before A Serious Man, the most Jewish they got was Walter Sobchak. That's really where they go and give us any kinds of insights into their feelings about Judaism. So I'd love to talk about A Serious Man.
Yeah.
Keeping the Faith was my number 2, and Dogma was my number 3. I mean, to me, these are, and I'm dying to talk about all 3, any of them, whichever ones. But for me, A Serious Man, which I just rewatched again recently, it's just,
that's Michael Stuhlbarg, right?
It's his breakthrough. Yep,
he's so good.
He's terrific in it. It's Richard Kind is in it, playing the brother Arthur Gopnik. This movie, The Serious Man, is first of all right. So it came out in 2009. It opens with a quote from a medieval French rabbi whose real name is he goes by Rashi, and it starts with this quote. It's just on the screen for a moment. It says, "Receive with simplicity everything that happens to you," which is like kind of like almost more Buddhist, but it is like a Jewish kind of sentiment. Um, this movie, so it comes out in 2009. It it cost 7 million to make. That's it. Keeping the Faith cost 30 million to
In
make.
1996.
Yeah.
In 19 in, well,
99.
Keeping the Faith, I think, was released in
99.
2000, made in 99,
Yeah.
released in
No,
2000.
whatever.
Dogma came out in 99. So Serious Man comes out. It's cost 7 million, makes 31 back, which is like a modest, kind of like win, but it's a win. It's Coen Brothers. People are going to watch it. But it opens with a Yiddish folktale with a dibuk, like recalling frailty. This idea of like a
Yeah.
demon that appears to be human. If you guys remember that scene, it's and I mean, like we can. It's as deep or as shallow as you want to get into it. Like this movie is like a philosophical version of Judaism that nothing approximates. It is. I mean, there's to me the core of the movie is the dentist story where the dentist sees this Jewish dentist sees Hebrew writing on the inside teeth of a non-Jew of a Gentile's mouth, and it says he translates it as "help me," and he's tortured by this. Like to me, and the rabbi telling that story is, of course, the character is Rabbi Knockner, but you'll remember him as Colonel Sanders from Spaceballs, whatever that actor's name is. Tremendous character actor. He's also in like my God, he's in Devil's Advocate, which should have been on my list.
That
or at
should
least
have that
honorable
is on
mentions.
my list.
I think Devil's Advocate
I
belongs in
love
the
that movie.
well, Devil's Advocate belongs in the same list as like Constantine,
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
like,
Yes. It's
uh,
adjacent. It uses it as the plot point.
Rosemary's Baby, or
I think it's
I don't
super
know.
fascinating, Ken. Like the most interesting thing about that is actually thinking about from the filmmaker standpoint that the Coens don't ever lean into this except for this one time. And I remember the movie was I remember I famously got into an argument with Paul over this movie because he's like you see A Serious Man, he goes, I call it a terrible movie, and I'm like, that's also just a terrible joke. But I'm like you just don't know. And then of course years later he forgot. He said that he's like, no, that movie's really good. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
you can't win
really
back on
good.
that one. It's really good.
It gets better every time you see it. It is, to me, it is so quintessentially Jewish. It's about trying to, it's like the core religious question that like anyone who is, whether you're on that 0 scale of like totally secular or totally atheist, or the 10 scale,
Or
of, like,
zero must help.
or zero
Zero to zero.
Oh
Zero
God.
to zero. I love it. Wherever you are on that scale, like everyone struggles with this, like, why do good things happen to bad people? Or like this world makes no sense. How do I make sense of it? Can I make sense of it?
Well,
should I make sense of it?
And there's something we didn't exactly latch on to because we talked about it for the Christianity religions, but one of the biggest differences between the Jewish religion and the Christianity religion is the lack of the punishment of the hell thing. And that's also fascinating to me that's so funny to me also of looking at like the Steve Harvey argument, which is so ridiculous to be like, well, there's a whole bunch of people that are not killing folks and like just acting like heathens that don't believe in hell. They just believe that you should be a good person because it's about living a good life.
This movie, like, you guys wouldn't believe, like, I had to do my own research as a Jew to get any kind of details from anyone about the afterlife. It just doesn't come up in Hebrew school. It's about the here and now. It's about the relationships that you have. It's about mitzvot, like good deeds you can do for people. It's about being a serious man. It's about being a mensch, a real human being. And what does that mean, right? Like when the rabbi, Marshak, at the center of A Serious Man, who Michael Stuhlbarg, Larry Gopnik, his character, is trying desperately to get to this rabbi and like just ask him for help. He's just reaching out in the darkness and he just can't get a meeting with this rabbi because the rabbi's too big, too academic, whatever. He meets with like 2 other like lesser rabbis. But when the rabbi meets with Gopnik's son, because he has a bar mitzvah or becomes a bar mitzvah, and every bar mitzvah has to meet with the rabbi, he quotes Jefferson Airplane to him, and he says, "Be a good boy," which is, be a mensch, be a good person. That's it. That's what he leaves him with. There's so many levels to it. I just really appreciate the performances are amazing. Obviously Stolbarg like explodes out of this like picture. Now he's looking at everything.
But it's also fascinating to
including
look
Dr.
at
Strange.
because it is representative of that religion. It's also the way that so when you talk about a movie that it feels inherently tied to a certain religion, whether we talk about Dogma, which is very much obviously mired in Catholicism and everything there, and the struggles are what's happening with those struggles, versus the struggles in Serious Man are very similar to how you're looking at your faith as well, is that they're not these big swinging things of this like this fear and this terror. It's a much more these smaller I want to be a good person is the struggle,
and
essentially.
But like my wife is leaving me, and for our mutual friend Cy Abelman, the name Abelman, he's an able man. Like he can do stuff that I can't do. The coda in this movie, not the coda, but like the motif that's happening is Larry's always like, I didn't do anything, and you want to like shake the TV and be like, Larry, you're a putz. Yeah, of course, this is happening because you're not doing anything.
Yeah,
right. There's also a commentary on passivity. Right. But you're right, Matt. This is not a movie about revelations or end of days and like oceans filled with blood and vampires sweeping out of the sky. No, it's about a guy who's like just feeling normal pressures. His brother is living at home and occupying the bathroom. His kids suck. His wife is leaving him. His neighbor is probably a white supremacist anti-Semite who like keeps like walking onto his property.
He's like
he might not get tenure.
He's like the more serious version of Ben Stiller's character in Royal Tenenbaums.
Oh right.
Yeah, he. You know what he is he's a stand-in. So the movie's set in the '60s, and even though obviously the picture comes out in 2009, it's a modern. I was reading some reviews of the movies that I picked, and there was a lot of like, this is a modern Job. Right, like story of Job. Like what happens when someone's faith is tested? Because he goes to shul, his son's becoming a bar mitzvah. He seems to be like a practicing Jew in the way that like Minnesota Jews were practicing in the 1960s. But yeah, like he's feeling. This is also part of a Jewish folktale tradition in stories by like Isaac Bashevis Singer or like Shalom Aleichem, where you've got the village idiot who's just like always getting in trouble and he can't get himself out. This is like a Schlemiel or the Chaim Yankel character, which means Uncle Chaim. It just means like everyone has that idiot uncle in their family. Well, like the Jews canonize it, right? Exactly.
Yeah. Before I forget, what is a schmozzle?
Oh, Schlemiel. Yeah, Schlemazel. Hassan Pfeffer. A
Schlemiel is the same thing.
A Schlemiel is.
You said the fool, but the schmozzle. What's the schmozzle? What is it? The second part?
Schlemazel, I'm not sure. Schlemiel is. I've only used Schlemiel. I don't know. Schlemazel might be made up. It might be a thing.
You gotta figure that out.
Schlemazel is an extremely unlucky or inept person and a habitual failure. A habitual failure.
Wow. A Schlemiel is an idiot, like a willfully ignorant idiot who like can't pull themselves out of it. So like a Schlemazel, I think, is someone like just bad stuff happens to them and it's like random. But like a Schlemiel is like it's kind of your fault. Like you won't grow, you won't like pull yourself out. Different than a schmuck, different than a putz, right? A schmuck is ironic. It means a gem or a jewel. Like you say, like, oh, this guy's a schmuck. He's
Yiddish is like Eskimos have like 30 words for snow, and Yiddish just there's like 30 words for a fucking asshole.
30 words for an asshole, 30 words for the best.
It's also
stew. That's it.
It's also shades of our boy Daredevil explaining the difference between a goon and a henchman to She-Hulk on the roof.
Yes, that's exactly right. Just this
but
picture.
It makes sense.
I don't know if you guys have seen this movie recently, but it really bears rewatching. There's so many things.
I have to go back because I only watched it when it first came out.
Oh, it's worth another look, I think, and it's a really really good. It's a really good insight into Judaism.
It had the it was unfortunate because it came out the year it was their follow up to No Country for Old Men, so it got kind of buried.
Was this the follow up, or was Hail Caesar?
No. So they shot Burn After Reading at the same time as No Country for Old Men, so those came out back to back, and then Serious Man was like the first legit movie. They
do this though. They do this because they'll have their big like kind of dramatic picture, and everyone fucking loves it. Like No Country for Old Men, like everybody loves it. Like even the far right loves No Country for Old Men. And then like and then they'll do like a kind of like a weird or madcap kind of comedy like Hail Caesar, which like people hate, but I think
or
is awesome.
I love that. And and I also like the Tom Hanks one that everyone hates.
Lady Killers.
Lady Killers.
Oh, Lady Killers. I think it's charming. I think it's fun.
It's not as
But
good as the original Lady Killers, though.
Probably not. It's
The original Lady Killers with Alec Guinness is way better. I must say.
Alec Guinness. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Although I just rewatched Lawrence of Arabia, and Alec Guinness's performance in Brownface and that, not my favorite thing, but whatever. It's what they were doing. Yeah, I mean, this is the Coen brothers. They get like The Big Lebowski got shit on, like when it first came out. People were like, "This is a trifle. It's dumb.
Didn't get it.
It's meaningless, right? When are they going to do another Miller's Crossing, or whatever? Like people love the serious stuff, but
people didn't like Barton Fink when it came out either. I mean,
people were confused as hell by Barton Fink. So yeah, I mean, these are master filmmakers and editors and writers, and top of their craft, and put together, because they are Jews from Minnesota. Like this is, it's also a personal film. It's kind of like they're Fablemans in a way.
Yeah.
It's and it's like it gets into a lot of things that I think are worth thinking about. Also, it's set in like the 1960s. So something that I was thinking about the last time I was watching it is like every character in this movie, except for the kids, are like they're aware of the Holocaust. Like that happened. Like that's like unspoken at like one end of this movie. And then if you recall, it ends with this tornado about to land, by this like Jewish school. So like you have these
there's a lot of
cataclysms.
It didn't take. I saw that and Take Shelter very close to one another, and there's a lot of very weird crossovers between the two of those movies.
I see that. Yeah, I see that. Yeah. So I mean, for me, this movie is right on. Like, yeah. Go ahead, son.
I think I just came up with something very obvious, but I'm just now getting it. Remind me what you said about Abelman. An able man, Fableman. He's a fable man. He tells stories.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
he's a
fable man.
He couldn't call him Spielberg's because that was a little too on the nose. So he's like, "What's another name?"
Yeah. He's a fable man.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
You should have seen Matt and I naming characters in Dream Riders at the bar, and we were just like, "We're so clever."
Oh my god, we looked up etymology for every name, and we built backstory, like all of the. So the worst part of it, by the way, is that like not knowing exactly what internet culture would become. If we released Dream Riders right now, everyone would have figured out the end of the show just by going to the names, because we built character arcs that matched the names like perfectly. And they're like, well, we know what's happening with this character. Like
little do on the nose.
Yeah.
I mean, one of their names was called Truman. I mean, for God's sake, we're like, he's the only one speaking the truth that's going on.
My favorite. Can I tell you my favorite version of this? In like it's called onomastics, like name meanings or whatever. But there's a great detective story called The Moonstone. It's like 19th century detective fiction, but the bad guy in it, spoiler alert if anyone's into like early 19th century detective fiction, but the bad guy is Godfrey Ablewhite. Like he is free from God, and able to appear pure or like true. Godfrey Ablewhite, great name.
That's great.
I thought that was going to be Trump's vice president nominee, but it sounded familiar to me.
It brings back really bad memories of another movie that could fit this theme. Angel Heart, of course, the often maligned Angel Heart. I wrote a story where there was like Satan in disguise, and I'd never seen Angel Heart before. And I thought about like, what am I going to name? Well, I want it to be too on the nose, but I want it to hint at him being Satan. And I go, he could be a French guy, Louis Cypher. Louis Cypher. I'm like,
Bill.
Yes. And then I'm
Bill
like,
Zabub.
I gotta watch. And right. And meanwhile, I'm like, this Lisa Bonet movie looks cool. And then my heart sank. His name is literally Louis Cypher or whatever it is. They beat me to it.
No one remembers a name from that movie other than you. All they remember is naked Lisa Bonet. That is the only thing that movie is known for.
It'll haunt me for the rest of my life.
Important moment.
I at least burned the calories to make him like French descent, to make that joke play a little better. And
he was descendant of Louis the 14th. It was Louis Cypher.
In your version, it was played by Gerard Depardieu.
He'd make a good Lucifer.
Taste the sweet fruit.
He would make a good Lucifer. Ben, what do you have? What's one on your list that you're passionate about talking about?
Louis Cypher.
Well, I have to.
I know I know what it is, right? It's the first one on your list because it begins with the word first.
No, well, I wasn't going to talk about. So, First Reformed is the exact same thing I was talking about earlier, where it's where you're talking about a conflict, an internal conflict, basically of a priest who doesn't understand, or he is losing sort of his point of his compass. Basically, he's unsure based off of what he is learning or what he is becoming passionate about, if it is in concert with his beliefs as a priest. And so, I mean, ultimately, it's just about kind of a self-dialogue on that front. If you haven't seen First Reformed, it's
phenomenally
powerful. No, but I was going to say the thing I have to talk about it is doubt.
Yes,
just because.
Yes. All right.
I think that's obviously play first, but if you're going to talk about religion, that is not only a movie / play about religion, but it has all of those themes of sort of the lost compass of internal struggle versus external struggle versus the old guard versus the new guard versus institution versus personal belief. It kind of runs the gamut, and the whole thing is kind of just about religion. So that's the one.
No, and I think it has maybe the single most effective and phenomenal use of a title, invoking the title in a movie or a play, and the way it is delivered and the scene in which it is delivered of just that I have so much doubt, and that whole thing gets me every single time. And it's such a normally that will pull me out of a movie so quick when you hear that title come up on there, but they do it so fucking well, and it's such a weight over that movie to building up to that point that it's just cathartic to hear it come out and have it happen in there. It's such a fucking good play.
And so I mean, and clearly and it has so many meanings, know, because she has no doubt that the father has done something illicit, where meanwhile the other, sister has doubts, and it's the whole conundrum, the actual kind of plot machinations of doubt, I think, make it like you could put that movie in any sort of context, even in a different position outside of the church, and it would still be a religious conversation.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Like it could be in a different business, or some sort of other thing, but just the way the morality argument of saying what do we know happened? How do we know what happened? Who can say what actually happened? What direction are we supposed to go? What's right? What's wrong? Who's has the moral high ground? That whole discussion, I think, that could lend itself to religion in any context, and it just happens to happen in the church.
This is of a piece with, sort of, hopefully I was able to communicate it like with a serious man, but at the core of both of these are uncertainty.
Yes.
And because when someone is religiously committed or devoted, like faith, like you have it or you don't, right? Like definitionally, faith means believing in something totally without any evidence, right? Well, that's not a legal definition.
Guess it would be nice if I could touch your body.
Doubt has that at its core, because and like the institution has to be so certain all the time. But when individuals are caught up in those machinations, like you're talking about, like that's where certainly one source of that conflict.
Sure. Yeah. And I could also bring up Scorsese's Silence as well.
Sure.
Which also, of course, very heavily plays into that. I think that doubt's the one that kind of cements it, because it's the thing I like about doubt is it's so self-contained and it's so brisk. You really get through from point A to point B very quickly in that movie. I mean, the doubt's only like
no, that's brisk, baby.
It's not like 97 minutes long. I mean, it's a movie that comes and goes pretty quick. Which actually, First Reformed is a little bit like that as well.
Yeah,
but
I mean, all of these movies,
like a Midwest convenience chain.
All of these ones that are on these lists here, they're all it's all of these repetition on theme for all of these things, of these struggles versus of the faith struggle and the fear of not having that. I mean, that's why we respond to Dogma, right? And Dogma has one of my favorite interchange, dialogue scenes in it, which is basically the difference between beliefs and ideas. And it's such a great little piece of writing. Like ideas are good, beliefs are dangerous, and because they're harder to change and harder to turn.
Right. Absolutely. But these religions don't survive unless like they are like dogmatically committed to certain things.
They have to make themselves to be infallible. Yeah, they build themselves because if anything they say could be wrong, then that whole house of cards falls down because there's so much shit that doesn't make sense. And if you pick away at one of those things, you got to pick away at everything, and it's going to fall.
Like the reputation of a priest.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what I would say about Dogma is you can learn a lot about a deeply religious person by how they react to that movie.
Yeah.
Because if they react poorly to that movie, I can say you're full of shit. And if they
methinks the lady doth protest,
because ultimately the real goal of that movie is to say it's an uplifting message. You know, it's like it's supposed to be. Yeah, it's not anti-religion. It's
anti-establishment. He's one of the most religious people. Like that was so funny.
I thought we would get to this like much sooner, but it's irreligious, but it is spiritual, right? In the same way that like Pulp
Bill
Fiction
Maher calls it
is
religious,
redemptive. Yeah, that's on my honorable mentions. Actually, but
not a great.
Like, I mean, no, not great. But yeah, I mean, this is at the core of a lot of these films is this. Like, well, where do you want that line to exist? Is this a spiritual movie? Is it a religious movie? What does that mean? Like, to me, religion just means it's like an organized belief system, right? And probably one that's been around for a while. That'd be like your, the bright line between that and a cult, like from what, Matt was talking about earlier. But yeah, 100%. This is, Dogma is, if someone is like, and there were massive protests, like, I don't know about massive, but there were significant protests.
Which he went to. And he went and his sign said Dogma is dog shit, and some of them thought that was a little too salty. It's so great.
He got interviewed for local news and stuff.
And it's funny
when I saw.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying when I saw Dogma, I was at a point where I wasn't like letting go of religion at that point. I was still going to church and things, and that monologue about the glass. And how when you first come into religion, your glass is full, and the same amount of fluid stays in the cup. But as you get bigger, the glass gets bigger. So it's not taking away any, it's not adding, but like that glass gets bigger, and all of a sudden that faith doesn't fill the cup. And I had never heard anything articulated how I felt without even knowing how to articulate it myself. And it was an oh shit moment for me. During that monologue in an abortion center, that like something like kind of like my body chemistry changed a little bit. Some electrons started firing. I didn't really think about it the same way because it wasn't about giving it up or raging against something you'd been raised with. It was just natural. Naturally, you get bigger. Naturally, it felt it normalized it. It made me feel like I wasn't crazy.
No,
I love that movie, and I watch it. I get something new every time I see it, and I go years and years between viewings, and I always expect I'm going to watch something in that movie specifically. I'm going to watch Dogma, and one year I'm like, that didn't really age well. And every year I get something new, and I like it even more.
Yeah, it's great, and it's
coming back on Blu-ray, Matt. Back on Blu-ray.
I still have my Blu-ray and my DVD, and I've got all of my Dogma.
You better sell it on
right
eBay now while you can still get some money for it.
It's
because apparently Harvey still had the rights to it, and they wrestled it away from him because he needs to pay his lawyers. And it looks like there might be another.
It's a miracle.
So you better.
Did we lose Ken?
Ken is, I think, he's there. He's just not visual for us, but he's there.
I'm coming back on in just a second.
He's a ghost.
He was just taking a poop, guys. He had to take a poop. He needed to poop, and he didn't want to take us with.
Ken is no longer with us.
We lost video. For our listeners at home,
we don't know where
Zoom. We can't see him.
We don't know where Ken is. We know he's not in hell because he doesn't believe in it, so he can't go there.
That's all it takes, by the way. All it takes is you don't have to believe in it.
You have no power over me.
Finale of Lost.
Well, it's funny. Obviously,
or The Sopranos.
Yes, we've talked about.
Don't stop.
Oh gosh.
We've talked about a lot of the afterlife stuff in here, which is not the movie Afterlife. God help us. Let's not ever talk about that on here again. What is interesting. So I had a lot of my religious movies were stuff that was, defending your life or The Good Place and stuff, which are, these are films that take place in the afterlife and talk about morality. But I kind of like where we went with the discussion better, because we really did stick more to, I think, Ken, you said it very much, was just that organized part of religion, right? We talked about stuff that is overtly done. We could probably do a whole other podcast on afterlife, because we didn't talk about Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, which is one of my favorite religious movies.
Honor. Can I I don't know if this is.
Yeah, you can go ahead and throw your list out. I'm super interested.
Okay. If I don't get at least 20 minutes on All Dogs Go to Heaven, I'm gonna be.
I put it on my list and I put Nip in parentheses.
Guys, I have to go to bed soon.
Yeah, so. I know. We ran a little bit over on this one
too.
Let's make music together. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm done.
You're fine. My honorable mentions were Going Clear, the Scientology doc, which I think is good. Really, really good. Religulous, which is not a great movie, but it is, if you're looking for something that's as dogmatically committed as any film about Catholicism, it's just committed to atheism, then that would be in there. It's only one scene, and I've already referenced the picture, but the scene in Hail Caesar where Josh Brolin's character gets the priests and the rabbi together just to make sure that they're cool with the depiction of the Christ. It's one of the funniest scenes in cinema history. I stand by that. The Tree of Life.
I put that was I was on my honorable mentions on mine.
It's, I saw that in theaters and I was just not prepared to see a movie like that day, and I have not seen it since. But
I put down the better version of that movie, which is The Fountain. No, I'm just joking.
Oh God. Yeah.
Did anyone?
There's definitely some Aronofsky on the bad list.
Did anyone put The Master on theirs? I did want to. I kind of wanted to talk about that one because that's one of the few actual Scientology tackling things.
Lord knows we'll talk about it on the sequel. Search for more religion.
Search for more money. That sequel's pretty good. I did have Bill and Ted Bogus Journey on this, just because
why not?
If you're gonna take a page out of Seven Seal and do it better, it's great.
Anything that invokes Ingmar Bergman.
Oh my God, amazing! And if you give me something from theater and something from TV, it's Righteous Gemstones and it's Book of Mormon.
I had Gemstones and Mormon on here for at some point. We Gemstones is better. Gemstones, I cannot wait for this next season. It is going to be so
it's
good.
Gonna be incredible. Yeah,
anybody else?
As far as the eye can see.
Since we're running low, does anybody else have any other ones they want to? Listen, we can do a part two. We can do part two.
I have an honorable.
Quills.
I believe I asserted my. Wow, just cut right in.
Sorry, what was it?
Quills? What? What is it?
Did you just steal Quills? Wait, what did you?
I said he doesn't even know what Quills is. I don't think.
I was gonna say Quills.
No, I was gonna say Quills.
You jumped in front of me. I was gonna say Quills.
Wait, are you serious?
No,
I wasn't. I was gonna have an honorable mention for the third Ghostbusters movie that never got made, where they went to hell and cemented the religious connection. But it never got made, so technically it cannot be considered for official consideration. But that's all I got. I'm good.
He wanted to bring up the Michael J. White Spawn.
I'm just glad also we didn't have to talk about the fucking.
Actually,
I'm just glad we did not have to talk about any of the Dan Brown fucking bullshit movies. But
whatever.
Can I give you my worst list?
Because I hope
it. Da Vinci Code.
Yes, thank you.
Number 2 is The Invention of Lying. 3 is Noah.
You don't like Invention of Lying?
I think it fails as a religious picture. I think it's supposed to be religious, and
it is.
I don't think for the same reasons that I think you were critical of your own first attempts at sort of onomastic wordplay and stuff like that. I think it's a clever concept that's it's just, for me, it's really heavy-handed, and it's it lacks kind of any sort
it's
of.
It's the Ben Wilson. My favorite Ben Wilson term is that it's too precious. That is my favorite film critique I get from Ben, which I now find it in many things. I'm like, okay, it's maybe trying to be a little too clever.
Yeah, it's too clever by half, and it's definitely too precious. Noah, The Fountain, basically anything from Aronofsky. Dear God,
I love The Fountain. I absolutely, unabashedly love The Fountain.
Here we go.
I love The Fountain.
I hated The Fountain.
Maybe I got to rewatch it. I'm just last one, and I promise I'll stop talking. A Dog's Purpose. With the reincarnated Josh Gad dog. I'm just like, I have to say.
I'm just happy that we have one episode of our 205 episodes of the show where A Dog's Purpose is brought, because I believe I brought that up on another podcast because I saw the preview and I'm like, I just can't with this fucking movie. I cannot.
Like, speaking as an educator, like it would turn your stomach if you knew how many people like that movie.
And then they made a sequel with like Bryce Dallas Howard.
No, that's A Dog's Porpoise, where she plays the porpoise.
That belongs to a dog.
Well, on that note, I think
a Dog's Porpoise, starring Woody Harrelson, and who is the voice of the porpoise?
Tilda Swinton.
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Tilda Swinton once again stepping.
And it's like the cover is Free Willy, only instead of the kid, it's the dog with the paw and the porpoise.
I can't believe we recorded an hour and 45-minute religious podcast, and this is how we're ending it. We are ending it on A Dog's Porpoise, starring Tilda Swinton. Anyway,
rated NC-17.
I want to thank Ken for joining us on the episode. We will have you back. Listen, we're going to have to do a Daredevil shakedown with you and Nick, because that should be very exciting, actually, when the new series comes up. But we want to thank you all for listening to The New Way, and we will talk to you next time. At the end of the show, Ken, we all say cheers. I will not count down to it because Nick gets upset if I do it. So you're going to hear me start to say
natural. Just say it. Just go for it.
So we'll talk to you next time, and cheers.
Isn't that better? You're just natural.
That's great.
Okay.